Now, during the time that this was all going on at home, I was talking with my boss, and I was talking with her boss. His name is Brett Jackson. He's the regional vice president at that time of business development. He's since now been promoted. Now he's a step above what he was. But his wife, Erica, was the director of the nurses at St. Vincent's Hospital for COVID response. And so he says, if you've got COVID, you're coming here. I'll make all the arrangements. You don't worry, but you're coming here. You're not going anywhere else. And I said, okay, boss. And so Thursday morning, when I woke up, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't smell. I couldn't taste. I was struggling. And Debbie said, you're going to the hospital. So we called Brett, told him we were on our way. He said, I'll make all the arrangements. And by the time, how many know there's about an hour and 45-minute drive from Wynn to St. Vincent's in Little Rock? But by the time I got there, all the arrangements were made. They were expecting me. Debbie drops me off at the entrance. Now, she brought home a portable oxygen machine to take no, you didn't? No, that's the next time. Okay, never mind. Scratch that. Chris, can you erase that? Okay, and so, anyway, we go. We got to Brinkley, and on the other side of Brinkley, and she thought she better pull over and call an ambulance because I was struggling. And I said, no, just go. By the time the ambulance got here, we'd be there, which, So we got to the hospital. She pulls up to the emergency room entrance. I get out, and I walk in, and I remember them telling me, go back to the car and wait. And I said, well, do we have to move? And the nurse said, no, your wife can stay there. We're going to come out and get you. Well, I no sooner got in the car and told Debbie to wait that they came out to get me in a wheelchair. And they took me in. I remember going in and being taken into the room that I was going to be at in the ER, which was isolated. It was a COVID, they had isolated some rooms for COVID. And so I was there. They told Debbie she could come back, right? You were able to come back while I was in the emergency room as they got my room. I was being admitted. I wasn't going back home. And so Debbie was allowed to stay with me. I remember that. Okay? I remember her leaving when they were getting ready to take me up. And I remember a phone call that she made as she panicked because she turned the wrong way on a one-way street to go to the hotel that Kindred Hospice put her in so that she could stay near me. Now, she wasn't allowed to see me, but they paid for a room for 2 weeks. And so I didn't know that. She did, but I didn't. And so I remember that. But from that moment forward, I don't remember anything else. I don't remember anything. I don't remember kissing her goodbye when she left the emergency room, and that. So they told her, you correct me if I'm wrong, they told you that day that I'd probably come home on Sunday, but I'd be coming home on oxygen, right? And so, okay, we caught it in time. Well, the 5th of January, that was the 31st of December. The 5th of so the first was Saturday, the second was Sunday. I took a turn for the worse, right? And, my blood pressure and all that, so they couldn't discharge me. And that. On the 5th, which would have been Thursday, the next week. Well, anyway, the 5th of January, I was put on a ventilator. The nurse that was prepping me for that, how many know that when you're put on a ventilator, they put you in a medically induced coma? So you're not, because it's a natural reflex to pull something out of your mouth that's shoved down. So they were on the other side. And it broke her heart. And she'll tell you she was in hysterics because we had lost good friends because they were put on a ventilator. A good friend of ours was laid to rest the day I was admitted to the hospital. And the way his experience was the same path I was taking at that time. Okay? So I'm on the ventilator. She's getting phone calls from, different nurses and doctors. One would tell her, I'm okay. It's going to be a battle, but he's going to be okay. The other one is saying, nope, he's on death's doorstep, and you need to start making some arrangements. And the nurses, and finally she broke down with her oldest daughter, and her oldest daughter said, "This is going to stop." So she decided to call the administrator of St. Vincent's. And if you know my daughter, she is feisty, and she didn't like what was going on with Mom, and she let that administrator know exactly how she felt. And that, well, my youngest daughter, who is a nurse, who is our prodigal child, and that's a story for another day, because I've only been told I got 4 hours here tonight, right? Okay, so I'm kidding. So, so anyway, so my youngest daughter she called the nurse that said I was dying, that told Debbie I was dying and that there was no hope. And she called him, it was a him, right? And she wasn't as nice as her sister. Okay? All right, so all that was going on. While I was at St. Vincent's on the ventilator, I had blood clots in both lungs, plural. And they called her and they said, "Debbie, you're going to have to make a decision. You need to discuss with your family and be prepared to come and say goodbye." And so Debbie called my brother Rick, who's a respiratory therapist. He's going for his doctorate. And Rick gave her a sense of peace by saying, "Whatever you decide to do, we know you love him. So you'll make a decision based, and we know that you love the Lord." So Debbie had put me on FaceTime or Facebook, and so prayers were going out. All of you were praying for me, and prayers with friends that I had made throughout the world that saw what was going on. Say they were praying in Africa and in Venezuela, I think, and Bali, and in Europe and in the United States, and that. So prayer was going up, and so guess what? Obviously, I survived the blood clots, didn't I? Okay, because nobody in this room believes you can talk to the dead, right? Okay, so then now, February 1st, they decide that I need to have a trach. So now I have a scar of, every good adventure has to have a scar. And I have one now. It's right here. So it's the trach. And so I got the trach and I got a feeding tube. Because obviously I couldn't eat. The feeding tube that they put in initially was through my nose. And they struggled to get it down. You would think a nose this size, it would be really easy. But they had some issues with it, so they put and that. So now on the 7th, I'm transferred to the LTAC in Jonesboro, the Arkansas Continued Care Hospital. It's in the old NEA hospital. Okay? And I'm telling you folks, I had the best care, period. Because while I was at St. Vincent's on the ventilator, the head of pulmonology, Dr. McCracken, walked by my bed and saw that I was fighting to breathe. And it had never been done before, okay, that she's aware of. And when I got to meet her in person in October, was it? In October, she said, "It's never been done, and I can't see anything done, up to that point." But she decided to turn the ventilator up to its most powerful setting and then flip me on my stomach and say, "Let him fight." And she told us, as I gave her a great big hug, tears, she said, "That's the reason you're here." And so guess what they're doing now? So I'm a case study. I don't get paid for it, but I'm a case study. Okay? So now I'm at the LTAC, and I'm doing well. I'm getting better, but I got my ups and downs in that. And so Debbie's trying to keep everybody posted as she's going through this journey too. Many nights she's at home crying, begging God and pleading to God to bring me back. I don't know since I got back if there's been some second thoughts to that, but So anyway, they give you a medication. It's called Haldol. Okay, that helps because of what they have to do to put you in the coma. The Haldol counteracts that. Okay. Well, guess what happened to me? I had a most rare, did I say that right? A very, 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 and I'll say very again, rare reaction to that sequence that caused my temperature to spike to 105 degrees. okay? 205 degrees. So while this is going on, Debbie's praying, because you see up here on the screen my favorite scripture in the Word, and it's it's found in Jeremiah 29, beginning in the 11th verse, and I'm going to read it, okay? And mine's through the NIV. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. In verse 13, find me when you seek me with all your heart. And so that scripture is also on my Bible cover. So guess what Debbie was praying to the Lord? That scripture for me, okay? And so now she gets the phone call saying that my temperature spiked to 105 and they can't break it. And so if they can't break it, this has been going on for 2 days, and if they can't break it, it's like baking everything inside. And eventually I'm going to have organ failure and brain damage. Now, so she gets that call. The very next morning, now she'll tell you, if she wasn't shy, she will tell you that night she really started praying. And that, and if we lived in an apartment complex, she'd have been arrested. But we live in a house, and so she could do it and not have to worry about what the neighbors think. But anyway, so the next morning at 7 a.m., she gets a phone call, and she knows by the number who it is. And so can you imagine what she started thinking? The story that she would say, and she's, so I'm speaking for her, is that she saw that and she started to shake. But when she answered it, the nurse said, Debbie, I know I've scared you. I know it's early, but I want you to know his temperature broke. And based on the MRI and the tests, there's been no damage to his organ or his brain, but you guys can decide on the brain issue later, okay? So that was the second time that they had called the family to prepare them to say goodbye and to ask Debbie to make a choice. And so you say, okay, well, if Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, plans to bless you and to prosper you, then Chuck, why did you go through what you went through? Well, fast forward to the book of James in the first verses 2 through 4 that says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete and not lacking anything. And other translations has your perseverance is fully developed and you're ready for all the righteousness that God has in store for you. So I got Jeremiah telling me that God knows the plans for me and he's going to bless me and prosper me. So why did I go through this? Well, because James is telling me to take joy, because God is preparing me and getting me ready for something, and also for Debbie, okay? Because Debbie's heard that a lot too, haven't you? Right? Okay? She has to hold this because I can't. That's why I keep giving it back to her. and so, okay, well, that's great, Chuck. You got Jeremiah telling you God's going to bless you, and you got James telling you to take joy in those trials and struggles. So how do you kind of navigate through that? Go to Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 that says, Pastor, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways. And see, I have this memorized, so she doesn't have to give me back the book. Okay? In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will set your path straight. So, now I'm in a coma. So Debbie's using that because she doesn't have to understand. We don't have to understand when we're going through the difficulties that we're going through. We just have to trust. We just have to trust in God. And Jesus, our high priest, he's greater than all the angels. He's the greatest of all. He has more power than all the angels combined to God. So as Jesus is sitting as our high priest in intercession for us, we have the ability through the Holy Spirit to trust God. His will be done. So Jeremiah 29:11 through 13, James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, and Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. So I've gone through the blood clots. By the way, I didn't tell you this. When I had the temperature, Pastor, they laid me on a bed of ice in my birthday suit. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, that may be an image that's, but it's part of the story, folks. Okay, and so then they poured ice all over me. There was not a part of my body that wasn't covered by ice, and what they said was it was like packing me for transport to be buried in another state. That's what they do with bodies in that situation. So I've gone through that. Now they're getting ready to take me off of the ventilator, right? And so all of this is going, and now I've got an infection called pseudomonas, okay, which is because I was on the ventilator for so long. And the only antibiotic that kills that is administered through IV, and I was admitted. That's what he passed away from, was the kidney failure because he was on the ventilator because of COVID. Okay, so now she's got that to deal with. And the doctors tell her and the nurses tell her, you're going to have to make a decision, Deb, because if this dose does not work, he will die on the second go-round because the first one didn't work. So now they call her and tell her we've got to do it a second time. Now she's able to see me at the LTAC. The 37 days I was at St. Vincent's, she couldn't see me. But at the LTAC, she could see me. And so she would drive from Wynn to Brinkley, from Brinkley to Jonesboro, and from Jonesboro home every day. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, just from here to Jonesboro. Other than when you guys got 15 inches of snow. So I've asked God, why did you do it? I'm from the north. Does anybody know that? I'm a Yankee. Don't hold that against me. And so snow, the first snow is awesome. Okay? After that, it goes away, right? Not in the north. I've experienced snow in October or the end of September that was on the ground until April. And I'm a baseball fan, so you know that it's real hard to play baseball in the snow. Anybody know that? Okay, so you told me we got 15 inches of snow in that, and our kids came and dug her out of the driveway so she could get up there. That was the only time, because you stayed with your dad during that week, right, Deb? So that was the only time. Well, I didn't know. I was on the ventilator, so in that, right? So it didn't, she knew it, though. So now they've got to give me the second dosage of that antibiotic because the first dosage didn't work. And then that's when they made sure Debbie knew that if it didn't work, there was nothing else that could be done because they couldn't give it to me a third time, and there was nothing known that they could give instead. Well, here I am. Again, you don't talk to the dead, so I survived that, all right? Now, a lot of folks ask me, did you have dreams? Did you see Jesus? Did you see God? No, I didn't have the white tunnel vision that you see on the movies or you see on television, but I did have dreams. I dreamt I was in the Navy. Pastor, I shared that with you. I was in the Navy. And my job, now I don't know how to swim, so that's unique, right? I'm in the Navy, don't know how to swim, but my job was to shoot fish with a harpoon, okay? And I was so good that I rose from E1 to E9 the fastest anybody in the United States Navy ever did, and I ended up on Good Morning America with Robin Roberts and Michael Strahan because of my success. Now, other than that, then I had a dream where she had an identical twin, okay, and they lived in identical houses, okay. I dreamt that dream that I have is my fight with Satan. And Pastor, it's as real as me standing right here. I remember it. He was dressed in black. He had a fiery red shirt, on, a black pants, a black coat. He was ashen in color. His hair was pulled back in a pompadour. That's what my wife said it was, pulled back. And the hair was a little darker than his face, but was more striking, if that's the right word to use, is his eyes. His eyes were as black could be. You know, the Bible tells us that our eyes are the pathway to the soul. So be careful of what you put in front of them. But what I saw in his eyes was no soul. No soul. And so we fought. And we fought like out of the movies. How many like action movies? Raise your hands. You know, like Lethal Weapon and, well, back in the day, now it would be The Matrix and that type of thing, and in the fights and that. I did moves I don't even know the names to, okay? But we fought. And he knocked me to the ground, and I'm laying on the ground, and he stands over me. So I'm laying, and he points his finger. And what I noticed, his fingers were kind of in an arrow. He didn't have horns. He didn't have a pitchfork, and he didn't have a cape. But he had, his fingernails were in an arrow, and it, you know, pointed like this. Okay, can you see that, guys? Ladies and gentlemen. And he pointed his finger at me, and he says, "I'm taking you to hell." And I said, "I don't think so." And the reason he wanted me to do it, and Pastor kind of helped me with this, because I struggled with it at first. Because, you know, I'm saved. If I take my last breath, this is the last thing I ever do, you rejoice, because I'm walking the streets of gold. Okay, the Bible tells us, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. So you be comforted in the fact that you're mourning my loss, I hope. Anyway, okay? But rejoice that I'm in heaven and we're one day going to be reunited. So I struggled with, why would he say he's going to take me to hell? And Pastor helped me one day at lunch. He said, because he wanted you to give up. Because if you give up, okay, look at all that's going to be affected by that. Look at, for the lack of a better term, the damage he's going to cause, because God moves the mountain and it's prayer that moves God. So why didn't my prayers get answered? Okay? And, you know, we go back in Romans 8:28 that says, in all things, to the glory of God. Now, those who love him, I'm paraphrasing, it actually says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. But the damage, the pain that would be caused, you know, would be hard. And so that's why he said he's taking me to hell, because he wanted me to quit. I said at Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans, right? And so I looked to my left, and about where that door is was a gold ring sticking out of the ground. And the ring signifies God's unending love, because the ring never ends. Okay? I knew if I could get to that ring, I'd get there. I'd be okay. It was going to be fine. So I grabbed it, and I pulled it out, and I pointed it at him, and he disappeared. And then the next thing I remember, is I saw my wife's beautiful blue eyes and her gorgeous smile. Okay? And so I woke up. I thought it was November 4th. And I asked Deb, I said, what day of the week is it? And she said, it's Tuesday, Pastor. I said, that's great. And she says, well, why is that great? I said, because my nurse came in that was taking over for the next shift, so I asked her. And she said it was April. I don't remember the day. And I said, well, that's all right. You and Debbie talked before I woke up, so you had this plan. Okay? But I also remember I had no use of my right leg, and I had no use of my right arm. Okay? And so I had to learn how to walk again. And I'm still struggling with learning how to write. Okay? It's very difficult. But Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6 is, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will set your path straight. So I had a goal. I was going to get back home. That was a goal. I was going to get back to work. That was number 2. And I was going to walk again. And so I spent another month in the LTAC, and finally I get put down in a step-down unit. I was in ICU this entire time. I get set down to the step-down unit, and 3 days later I'm sent to Clay Cliff Nursing and Rehab. How many here have ever heard the adage, never use the word never and because? Okay? Debbie, and I said, okay. And then I said something, and then they looked at me and said, that's all right, Daddy. We'll just put you in Clay Cliff. And I said, please forgive me, it will be a cold day before I ever spend one night at Clay Cliff. Well, on April 20th, I was admitted, and I spent 79 days at Clay Cliff. Okay? My goal when I got there was to leave in 3 weeks under my own power. The therapist, Debbie had the physical, the occupational, and the speech therapist there, and that because I wanted to be out in 3 weeks. And since she's the administrator, I have pull, right? So they were there when I got there. They didn't even think I'd be able to be standing today talking to you. They thought it would be January, February before I would be able to leave and get back to some sense of normalcy, functioning-wise. But I was leaving in 3 weeks. The other thing I was going to do is going to eat it twice and have me, and I would do swallowing exercises. How many of do this? Take your tongue and bite it between your upper and lower jaw, and then swallow. Okay? Do that 25 times. Okay? I had to do it 25 times to get a teaspoon of ice chips. Okay? And now I can't eat and I can't drink, right? How many know when you're in that situation, everything on TV is about food and it's about drink? And the Dairy Queens had a commercial on, and there was a drink that I wanted. It was some kind of spring drink, and it just looked delicious, and I wanted it. So I said, Debbie, you could go to the Dairy Queen and get it, and you could bring it back. This is Law's theory. Okay, I was like that dog. She walked in the room, I started salivating. I was getting that ice, but I could not eat the entire time. So what I told Deb when I got to Clay Cliff, the reason I wanted that speech therapist there is because that speech therapist was going to give her the authority. See that? It grabbed me. Give her the authority to feed me a tuna fish sandwich and a cherry Coke. So the physical and occupational therapist, they do their assessment. Now comes the speech therapist, and I tell her, I point my finger as best I could. At that time, it was like really constricted, but that finger stuck out, and I said, you're giving me an order, or her an order, so I can eat, or I'm chasing you down the hallway. And she laughed, and she gave me an Oreo cookie, I think, at first, right? Oh, she gave me the thick and liquid, yeah. Anybody here ever had thick and liquids? Anybody here ever know somebody that has? Okay. The first thing she gave me to drink was a thickened apple juice. Okay? I wouldn't give it to my worst enemy. Do you understand that? And if you're ever told drink this and they say it's thickened apple juice, throw it at them. Okay? Because you don't want it. It leaves an aftertaste for weeks. So I drank the thing, and then she gave me the Oreo cookie to take away the taste. That didn't work. Okay? And then she had me do some other tests. She didn't have me do this, but she had me do a couple other things, and then she had me say, kitty, 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 kitty. I had to say that 10 times. And then I had to say, woo, pig suey. That's another story for when I first moved down here. I'll share with you in just a second. But she had me do those. Bottom line is I got the ability to have a tuna fish sandwich and a cherry Coke. But the taste of that apple junk ruined my first solid food in 6 months, 5 months. Okay? Now, I didn't walk out of Clay Cliff in 3 weeks, but I did walk out of Clay Cliff on my own power on July 4th. And I went home without a cane and without a walker. Okay? And I stand here before you today. I'm not able, I want to play golf, but I'm not able to play full 18 holes yet. But I did play in our country clubs. Debbie and I are the members of Ridgecrest Country Club here in Forest City, and they they always on Labor Day and Memorial Day and on the 4th of July they have a two-man scramble. And Debbie and I and Chris and Michelle, they allow us to play with them because we help them look really good. Okay? And so, but I got to play 5 holes. And then I played another 4 holes where I just putted. But the other goal I had was to get back to work. Okay? That was very important to me. And so I started back to work on August 30th. Okay? Now, leading up to this, my pulmonology team, Dr. Kreiner at the LTAC, and then Dr. Ramos, when I got out of the LTAC, they're all part of the same group at NEA Baptist Pulmonology Group. They were, Dr. Kreiner he's awesome. But I couldn't see him after I got out because he had to go, and it was going to be 2 months before I could get in to see him. They didn't want me, so they passed me on to Dr. Ramos. And he's from Puerto Rico, and he and I just hit it off. I mean, hit it off. And he put me on a treatment plan to where I could get back to what he called my new normal. Now, at this time, they felt that I would never get back to the same health prior to the COVID because I have COVID long haul, I have COVID pulmonary fibrosis, and I have what is called interstitial lung disease. And Dr. Ramos put me on a plan, okay, and while I was telling him this story, he looked at me when I got to the because he was facing this way and I was sitting there. He turned and he said, "You're the guy." And I looked at him and said, "I'm the guy what?" Because I figured the next thing you know, the police was going to show up. And he said, "You're the guy." And I said, "What?" He said, "Because every time we get together and we talk, you are brought up." So he puts me on this plan, and he says, "I think you've got," he looked at the CAT scan, and it was really, really bad. He said it was cluttered. There was a lot of damage from the COVID and we know for a fact you've got COVID pulmonary fibrosis. Well, pulmonary fibrosis is the hardening of the lungs, okay? And eventually it will cause the lungs not their function, which means you die, okay? So now that's what I'm thinking, okay, great, I got COVID pulmonary fibrosis, so how long have I got? Because while I was in the LTAC and I was at St. Vincent's, thank you, they had, on 2 separate occasions, they talked about putting me on hospice, okay? And usually that's, prognosis of 6 months or less, okay? And so we got that, and I'm going, okay, fine. But he says, "Chuck, you don't worry about that, because what we know of the COVID in the little time that we've been able to study it, is that COVID pulmonary fibrosis, that damage is done, and it ain't going to get worse. It's never going to get better, but it's never going to get worse." So I asked about a lung transplant. And he said, "No, we can't do that," and that. So, but he says, I think you've got interstitial lung disease. And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he says, "It's like shingles. Every one of us could have interstitial lung disease and not know it. Every one of us could have shingles, the virus that causes those, and never know it. Because for whatever reason, the trigger that causes them to act is never pulled." Now, I had symptoms of it before, but it wasn't anything to worry about, okay? And I would start to cough real hard, and then I would get, feel like I'm going to pass out. Matter of fact, I did one day at the house and ended up at St. Bernard's getting 6 stitches, broke my nose. I fell face first on the tile in my office. And that, so I had the symptoms, but it was not anything. I never went to a doctor to find out what was going on. But the COVID woke it up. Okay, so the treatment, the doctor, he says, "I'm looking at your CAT scan. It's really filled with a lot of stuff. I don't know what it is, but we're going to try this for you for the first 30 days. And when you come back to see me, we'll go, and we're going to do another CAT scan with what happened. Take care of yourself first. You've got to put yourself first." Well, I've always put my job, where it needed to be. God first, my wife second, my children third, and then my job. It wasn't about me. And I wanted to get back to the way I was before because of everything that Kindred Hospital has done for us. I was not going to let them down. So I went back full gun, full throttle. And the next thing you know, I'm getting worse again. I can't breathe without can't take a deep breath, without coughing violently to the point where I got to throw up. Is it okay to say that in church? Is that another TMI issue? But and that. So now I'm back in front of Dr. Ramos, and he says, "Yeah, Chuck." He says, "You got to. We're going to have to do a bronchoscope because I think it's the interstitial lung disease, and it's caused by. Are you ready for this? Secondary smoke. I was around secondary smoke for 35 years. And I'm not talking about just a little bit. My mom and dad were 3-pack-a-day smokers, Pall Mall unfiltered. Some of us remember those. Most of you won't, but those that do, tell them. They're a very potent cigarette. And so and then my brother smoked and my sister smoked and my first wife smoked, and it was horrible. Now, and I always told people, if I ever come down with something like lung cancer and they say it's secondary smoke, I'm going to get a gun and start shooting anybody that smokes, just to kind of say thank you. I didn't want to end up, on it. I didn't want none of that. She said, "Chuck, I want you to live." I said, "I don't want to." And so we had that conversation. I didn't have to go on the ventilator. The day I got discharged to go home, the doctor says, "Chuck, I'm going to tell you something. I think, based on what we now know, we can get you back to your pre-COVID days as long as you do what we tell you to do and you listen. For I know the plans I have for you, say the Lord." Okay? And I stand here today. Okay? Now, I've done all the talking, but my wife really rode this journey too. And she's shy and she doesn't really want to get up here and stand and talk, and plus I'm at 5 after 6. I was told I had till 8, but everybody would really like to go home by no, see, a lie pastor is this, okay? That when you say something to somebody that you know is not true and you expect them to believe it. There is nobody in this room that just believed what I said, okay? So, it's kind of like Tom Hanks saying stupid is as stupid does. He didn't write it, but he got credit for it. But anyway, so the point that I'm trying to share is Proverbs 18, verse 22 says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and receives favor from the Lord." And this woman right here is a testament to that. We've celebrated 21 years, and our goal is to make it 50, which means I'll be 95, and she'll be a spry 73. So, no. Uh-oh. I see there, God's saying, don't say those anymore. But anyway, that's my story. 1 year, 52 weeks ago today, really, I'm going to say the journey started. And I have that can I say, is it a trophy? The trophy that you gave me. You gave it to Debbie. But I have that in my office that says thank you. Being there, and I've been recruited by the man upstairs. I'm in another play. Okay, this time I have the starring role. Okay. Don't I? Well, we'll find out. But it's going to be for Easter, right, Chris? Yeah, so it's going to be for Easter. And he wrote it. Okay? So maybe he and I will end up on the red carpet in Hollywood when we get handed Oscars. Maybe someday. But from the bottom of our heart, David, come on, stand up with me, please. From the bottom of our heart, we want to say thank you very, very much for your prayers and your steadfast belief that God was going to do in me what needed to be done so I could stand in front of you to say he's still the miracle-working, powerful God that was on this earth when his son walked on this earth. And I hope that God will use this so that I can go out and share with other people, other folks that may be struggling. Okay? God has a plan for each and every one of us. And if we seek him earnestly with all our hearts, we will find him. And if we realize that because of those plans, sometimes we have to go through difficult times. Now, for me, it was what I shared. For you, it could be something else. But God is using that in your life to develop perseverance. And then if you will trust God with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, it will enable you. See, because you don't have to understand. You don't have to like it. But if you love the Lord and you want to serve the Lord, then you must trust the Lord and know that Jesus is sitting at his right hand in intercession for you. And then Romans 8, verse 28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. So you see, God knew the plans. He knew me before I was formed in my mother's womb. He knew what it would take for me to meet her. And he orchestrated all of that path. Now, it was a long and winding road, and if you want to take another 8 hours, I'll share. But just suffice it to say, he brought Debbie and I together at the right time because he knew I was going to need her to get through this. Okay? And I've been blessed because I get to call her my wife. Okay? And I will honor her. Ephesians 5, verse 25 says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And I promise everyone that I will do that. But thank you from the bottom of our heart. And I've talked to the pastor. Debbie and I are going to be getting with him about becoming members. Don't throw anything yet. Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much. Did you want to say anything, hon? Okay. Thank you, Pastor. It was my honor. Thank you. Did I turn this off? Oh, it's a good thing.